Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, if you do enjoy the video that you came here to watch, do me a favor, go ahead and hit that little red subscribe button at the bottom of the screen. It really does help my audience grow. It really does help this channel grow. It means more than you realize. So go ahead, hit that little red button. Also, remember, full episodes of the Aaron Torres Podcast, wherever you download your podcast, Apple, Spotify, etc. Now, here is the video that you came here for.
All right, everybody. I am back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. And I do want to go ahead and wrap with actually some college hoops, because believe it or not, Monday night was the opening night of college hoops. Yes, the actual regular season tipped off on Monday night. And if you were not totally aware, well, there's a good reason. It is because I've never seen a sport put on a less impressive opening night. So we had all top 25 teams in action, okay? We had all top 25 teams in action. The problem was there were no matchups of top 25 teams. As a matter of fact, I'll take it a step further and tell you this. Not only was there no matchups of top 25 teams, there was no matchups of power conference opponents. In college basketball, we call it the Power Six, the Power Five, the ACC, SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, plus the Big East. We didn't even have a matchup of a Power Six conference versus Power Six conference. So to be clear, I understand why this happened. So traditionally, college basketball starts off with the Champions Classic. That's that 4-team event: Kentucky, Duke, Michigan State, Kansas. This year, because the first Tuesday of what would be the college basketball calendar falls on Election Day, they decided to push the Champions Classic back. But at the same time, could we not get one entertaining game on the opening night of college basketball? Could we not get Gonzaga to schedule somebody? Somebody couldn't have convinced Gonzaga to fly cross country and play them. Somebody couldn't have convinced, whoever. I don't know. But I am blown away by the fact that nobody thought, you know what? Maybe we'll put on an interesting game here on the opening night of college basketball. But I don't want to complain, because we did get games. And what I really want to do is break this segment into two parts. What I want to do, just very quickly react to some things that I saw. I'm not going to spend a ton of time over analyzing, well, this team looked here and I didn't like their pick and roll defense. Like, that's not what we're going to do. Just some quick reactions on about 6 or 7 teams. And then what I want to do, because I have not done it yet, I want to make my official season picks. I'm going to give you my Final Four picks, my national championship pick. There's going to be some surprises in there. And I'll give you a few teams that I also like that I don't quite have there. And I'll explain some of the other teams as to why I do not like them as much in the race. So let's get into just some odds and ends from the night. Again, nothing super marquee that immediately caught my eye. I'll tell you what, we'll start with something very obvious. I'll say this. 2 teams that I was actually very impressed by: Duke and Villanova. Why am I putting them together? Well, it's because both lost Hall of Fame coaches. Villanova, Jay Wright retires. Duke, obviously, Coach K. For Villanova, I'll be honest, they were a team that coming into this year I had questions about. And obviously, look, we will see what happens. It's opening night. You don't want to overreact. But this is a team that not only lost a Hall of Fame head coach in Jay Wright, they lost the 2-time Big East Player of the Year in Colin Gillespie. Their best returning player, Justin Moore, may be out for the season with an Achilles injury he suffered in the Elite Eight. Their best freshman, who's also their best NBA draft prospect, Cam Whitmore, is hurt. And they came out, and I watched most of this game. They looked exactly like Villanova. Every other Villanova team I've ever seen. 4 starters in double figures. Caleb Daniels, one of their returnees, 6 3-pointers made, 24 points. And they just kind of look like Villanova. A lot of pump fakes, a lot of ball movement, a lot of passing, a lot of cutting. They beat LaSalle by 13, and obviously Villanova, things are going to get tougher. They play Michigan State next week, and then they go out to that PK80 event, PK85 event. Remember, we have the PK85, the Phil Knight event. Villanova will be in a bracket with, I believe, UConn, Oregon, Alabama, North Carolina. So we're going to learn a lot about Villanova in the coming 10 days to 2 weeks. But I'm just telling you, I was actually very impressed. They looked exactly like Villanova. You wouldn't have known Jay Wright wasn't there. And listen, I'll give credit where it's due as well. I thought Duke actually looked really good as well. And the thing with Duke is like, look, I get it. It's John Shire. What do we really know? All that. And he did bring in the #1 recruiting class in the country, which is like important to note. What is also important to note is the 2 best players in that class did not play on Monday night. Derek Lively and Dariq Whitehead, neither was available. It did not matter. Like Villanova, 4 starters scoring in double figures, led by Mark Mitchell, one of those 5-star freshmen, 18 points. Jeremy Roach, the only returning player from last year's team, actually looking very good in this game as well. So credit to Duke, 71-44. They beat Jacksonville. Don't claim to know how good the Jacksonville Dolphins are, but I thought for night one with John Shire, with 2 key players out, they looked really good. What'll be interesting to see with Duke is obviously what happens next week when they go to the Champions Classic. They will open with Kansas. Remember, Kansas does not have Bill Self right now, who is currently suspended. Speaking of the Champions Classic, one of the other teams that will be playing in that event, it is Kentucky. And Kentucky, I'll be honest, maybe in some ways it was better that we didn't get the marquee signature event on opening night, because Duke was without 2 key players. Kentucky was without several key players, including their starting point guard, Severe Wheeler, and more importantly, a National Player of the Year, Oscar Tshiebwe. With that said, they took care of business against Howard. They won by 32. And I think if you're a Kentucky fan, what you have to feel good about, the 3-point shooting was excellent. This has been a problem up and down. Late last year, the 3-point shot kind of disappeared. Well, Kentucky shoots 11 of 24. How about 6 3-pointers for Antonio Reeves, the transfer from Illinois State? CJ Frederick, Kentucky kid, played high school ball in Kentucky. He's technically from Cincinnati, but you get the point. Played at Iowa, transferred to Kentucky, missed all of last year, comes back, has 20 points, and looks awesome. And then my guy, Jacob Toppin, 15 points, 11 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals. I think this kid has All-American potential written all over him. Really excited to see Kentucky next week against Michigan State in the Champions Classic. By the way, speaking of Michigan State, I don't think I've mentioned this. I will actually be at the Michigan State Gonzaga game on Friday night on the aircraft carrier, so really excited for that one. But Kentucky takes care of business. Again, I don't think there's a ton to take away. Cason Wallace, the 5-star freshman, I thought looked really good as well. 15 points, 9 assists. Credit to him, man. No Severe Wheeler. He stepped in. He handled the ball. I think that is a great sign for Kentucky going forward. Some other teams that stood out really quickly. I'll just say this. We're going to get to my Final Four picks in a minute, but I truly love the Houston Cougars. How about my Cougars? I love me some Cougars. But the thing about Houston, they are just a team that wants to rip out your heart and eat it alive. Like, that's how they play. That's who they are. How about this for an opening night performance? They win 83-36 in a game where they held the opponent to 36 points on 25% shooting from the field. This is a real team. Like, they played a Division I team and held them to 36 points in this game. And that's who they're going to be all year. That's how they play defense. Now, offensively, they're really good. Marcus Sasser was out late last year, but is back and looks really good. 21 points for him. I think he is a potential All-American. We're going to talk about Houston in a minute. Wink, wink, nod, nod when I get to my Final Four picks. A couple other teams that stood out. Listen, Arkansas, we've talked a lot about them over the course of the offseason. Got to give credit where it's due. Nick Smith Jr., a potential top 5 pick, was out. And guess what? They showed exactly the depth that they are going to have. Remember, we talked all offseason. What have I said all offseason about Arkansas? I've said this is a team that has 3 McDonald's All-Americans. They have 6 top 100 players, but they also have a couple transfers that I believe can have instant impact on this team for the Razorbacks this coming season. And so what happens on Monday night? There is no Nick Smith. Anthony Black, the freshman, unfortunately goes out with it looked like he rolled his ankle. He seemed to be okay. So what happens? 2 of the transfers, Ricky Council, 22 points. He had a sick dunk, let me tell you that. 21 points, 12 rebounds for Trevon Brazile. And I do think, as much as I like the freshmen, I think it's going to be those older guys that really step up and are going to be keys for this team. Trevon Brazile specifically is a guy that I think is going to play his way into the first round. When you have 21 points and 12 boards, by the way, 3 3-pointers made for that kid as well. This is a team that is going to be awesome, but I think they're going to look a little bit different than we thought. We spent so much time hyping up the freshmen. I'm telling you, those 2 transfers, Trevon Brazile, Ricky Council, are the names to watch there. They looked awesome. A couple other news and notes. My UConn Huskies look pretty good. Listen, I'm a UConn guy. I like this team. There's nothing else for me to say other than that I think this team is really, really, really good. And when I look at UConn, great opening night performance. They score 85 points in a win. The concern is that I mentioned this a few weeks ago. Their best player, Andre Jackson, went out, is going to miss the start of the season with a thumb injury. And their second best player, Jordan Hawkins, who's also projected by many to be a first-round pick, he left less than 10 minutes into this game. I believe he hit his head. I don't know if it's officially a concussion. Didn't see exactly what happened in real time. But, man, you talk about an injury bug for a team. UConn right now just can't catch a break. They had all sorts of injuries last year. This year, your best player's out to start the season. Your second best player gets hurt with a concussion. Not good news. Not good news at all. From the UConn perspective, two guys that stood out to me. One, true freshman Donovan Klingen is from Connecticut, about 7'2". I thought this kid played really, really, really well. Finished the game, his debut, 9.7 rebounds, 11 points for Hassan Diarra, a transfer guard from Texas A&M. I think he's going to be really good for that team. Other scores, Auburn takes care of business. Kansas takes care of business. TCU wins by 1. And I will say this, I am recording in real time. It looks as though Arizona is slowly starting to run away from their opponent. Arizona is a team that I think is probably a little bit undervalued this year. They obviously lost the three top 40 or so picks in Dalen Terry, Benedict Mathurin, who has been awesome, by the way, in the NBA, and Christian Coloco. But Tommy Lloyd, man, he's got that system humming. He's got that system going. And you look at this team right now, big opening night for Azuolas Tubelis, a returnee, big opening night for Umar Ballo, move the ball, passing, cutting, assists, all that good stuff. Arizona looked really good on opening night. With that said, I do want to switch gears really quickly before we get out of here. And I do